Remember to wash your hands thoroughly and frequently before and after preparing food, after using the toilet or changing a diaper for a baby, sick person, or the elderly, after blowing your nose, and after leaving large gatherings or moving away from persons who appear ill. Encourage others to wash their hands and also use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer of 60 to 70% solution. Stay away from events having large gatherings of people. You can expose yourself to more possible infections in large groups. Also, avoid sharing cutlery, cups, glassware, etc. with others. Viruses can linger on these items and may be transferred this way. Avoid shaking and holding hands, and hugging or keeping an infected person in close proximity. This is a message from the Ministry of Health and the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA.
Welcome to Leadership Matters. Joining us tonight on Leadership Matters are Accountant General and the Chairman of the STEP Regularization and the Pensions Reform Committee, Mr. Levi Bradshaw, Labor Commissioner, Ms. Chanel James, and the Director of the St. Christopher and Nevis Social Security Board, Mr. Antonio Maynard. The Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. the Honorable Timothy Harris, will be joining us a little later tonight in the program. Tonight, we will discuss a range of employment or labor-related matters. A lot will be discussed tonight. So first, I invite Mr. Antonio Maynard, the Director of the St. Christopher and Nevis Social Security Board, to deliver his opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair Lady, Ms. Valencia Grant, and good evening to everyone. Let me take this opportunity to acknowledge the Honorable, our distinguished Prime Minister, Dr. the Honorable Timothy Harris. I was told that he will be joining us later, and thank him for his continued exemplary stewardship and leadership in keeping this beautiful country safe and its people healthy. Over the past 7 months, the Social Security management team and staff have been actively engaged in processing and disbursement of the COVID relief payment for persons whose income has been adversely impacted during this very difficult period. As is testimony from so many persons, this support has provided much needed relief for almost 10,000 persons, paying out a grand total of just over $20.6 million, representing the months of April with $7.9 million, May $7.6 million, and June $5.5 million. These figures reveal a gradual decrease in payments, as you can see, whereby in June, a significant number of persons had returned to work. However, minimum payments are still being disbursed for that period up to yesterday, the 12th of October. This means that persons are still being paid for those previous months mentioned above. Subsequent to those payments mentioned above, the Minister of Social Security, the Prime Minister himself, and the Social Security Board approved and announced the continuation of the stimulus COVID package, extended for the month of September only, up to a maximum of an additional $3 million. Payments started for this on the 25th of September, and up to yesterday, the 12th of October, we have paid out of the September allotment a total of $1.5 million, covering 1,159 persons from St. Kitts and 405 persons from Nevis. These payments for September are continuing, and we do expect to reach the $3 million threshold in a few days. The board also approved the proposed guidelines submitted by management in order to manage these payments under strict governance principles and to ensure that payments are disbursed prudently. We made several pronouncements about the guidelines for the September disbursement, especially because we wanted to ensure that we capture those insured persons who have not returned to work. And based on our verification and employment data, as at the end of September, approximately just over 1,000 persons have not returned to work. In order to activate the September payment, the list of employers with the names of employees to be paid and any new application from self-employed persons in particular must have been submitted to the Social Security Board no later than the 18th of September at 4 p.m. It was also important to note that persons in receipt of Social Security pension, government employees, employees of statutory corporations, and step workers, persons in receipt of PAP or any other form of income, or on reduced hours were not eligible or qualified to receive these September payments. Also, any employees who filed for and receive his or her redundancy payment will not be eligible for the COVID relief fund. However, self-employed persons within the tourism industry who are registered and not resume activity will be eligible. And in fact, we have paid over 200 self-employed persons thus far. I want to assure the self-employed persons in particular that once you have applied on or before the 18th of September, you will be paid. This is a promise and a guarantee that certainly you can take to the bank. I want to assure the general public also that the verification process conducted by our compliance department, in spite of its complexity, was done with proper due diligence to ensure that persons who are most deserving of these funds actually receive them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Director of the St. Christopher and Nevis Social Security Board, Mr. Antonio Maynard. I now turn to Mr. Levi Bradshaw. He's the Accountant General in the government, for the government of St. Kitts and Nevis, and the Chairman of the STEP Regularization and Pensions Reform Committee.
Thank you very much, Valencia, and I must also acknowledge the Honorable Prime Minister, who will join us shortly. A pleasant good evening to the viewing and listening audience. On the 16th June 2020, the government of St. Kitts and Nevis established the Skills Empowerment Program, which we refer to as STEP. The STEP Regularization and Pensions Reform Committee, comprising senior officers representing various government ministries and the STEP Secretariat. The committee was charged with two mandates. One, the regularization of the STEP workers as government auxiliary employees by the 1st of July 2020, and two, the operationalizing of the government contributory pension plan by the 1st of September 2020. The Skills Training Empowerment Program, STEP, is an initiative of the government of St. Kitts and Nevis, which is financed by the federal government and implemented in both islands, St. Kitts and Nevis. The program currently has approximately 1,123 employees or workers assigned across the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, with approximately 1,680 attached to the public sector, that is government ministries, departments and agencies, and parks and beaches, and 1,084 assigned to the private sector. Additionally, there is 189 persons attached to the public sector in Nevis and an additional 170 persons assigned to the private sector, also in Nevis. The regularizing and transitioning of step workers into the public sector of St. Kitts and Nevis as government auxiliary employees would be governed by the Government Auxiliary Employee Act of 2012. The Act provides for the establishment of Government Auxiliary Employees Commission, which is a similar commission to the Public Service Commission. And this commission will be established in both islands of St. Kitts and Nevis. The commission shall have the power to appoint government auxiliary employees, to exercise discipline, control over all GAEs, and to suspend and dismiss such employees. The regularization of the step workers would be undertaken in a phased basis, commencing with those workers who are assigned to ministries and departments, followed by those assigned to the parks and beaches. I am pleased to report that the step workers would enter the public service as government auxiliary employees with an effective date of employment being the first day of July as mandated. In order to ensure due diligence in the regularization process, the Accountant General Department, Ministry of Finance, in collaboration with the Human Resource Management Department of the Office of the Prime Minister, are currently undertaking an exercise to authenticate and verify the accuracy of the records of the STEP employees who are to be assigned to the various ministries. The physical verification of STEP workers is geared towards the elimination of any possibility for the regularization and transition into the public sector of any ghost workers. The committee has made several recommendations, and as part of the process, we have recommended that an employee performance evaluation must be conducted for each step worker to assess their quality of work, job knowledge, their productivity, communication skills, adaptability, initiative, dependability, service orientation, interpersonal skills, attitude and behavior, planning and organization. There are tremendous benefits that will accrue to persons who are transitioned into government from the STEP program. And these persons, firstly, would be eligible for appointment into the public service under the Government Auxiliary Employees Act. They will also benefit from greater job security and security of tenure, consistent with the guidelines, terms and conditions of employment to be established in the regulations of the GAE Act 2020. In addition, the eligible employees who would be regularized and transitioned as GAEs would be enrolled in the government health insurance scheme. They would also be eligible for enrollment in the government contributory pension plan, and they would also be eligible for the long service gratuity, which is paid to government GAE workers when they would have demitted office at age 62 under the Long Service Gratuity Act. Additionally, these persons, when they are transitioned into government, would also become eligible for a lump sum payment of life insurance, which would be paid to their estate or their beneficiaries upon their passing. During the coming weeks, the committee, in collaboration with the STEP Secretariat, will be conducting a series of meetings with the various STEP workers in all ministries and departments, and indeed those who are assigned to the parks and beaches throughout the island, to update them on the regularization and transition process. The second mandate of the committee was to address the issue relating to the operationalizing of the contributory pension plan. The Pension Amendment Act of 2012 is the legal framework for the operationalizing of the contributory pension plan. Indeed, The committee was able to advance the work started several years ago in May of 2017, when the Honorable Prime Minister would have convened a meeting to address this very matter, and to address, in addition, the matter of the restoration of the payment of honorariums to government auxiliary employees. Under the new pension contributory plan, or the new contributory pension plan, each eligible employee will be required to contribute 3% of their gross wage or salary. This will be matched by the employer, in this case being the government, who will contribute 3% also. This is geared towards encouraging GAEs and indeed government employees who are eligible for this particular pension to commence savings and prepare for their retirement. The operationalizing of the Pensions Amendment Act will positively impact and benefit the following categories of workers. There are currently in existence 1,209 GAE workers who are currently working in government. They would benefit with the operationalizing of this plan. In addition, there are 1,507 currently active monthly paid employees who would have entered the service and are not eligible for a pension under the non-contributory pension plan. In addition, the step workers who will be transitioned into government would also be eligible to benefit from this pension plan. Please allow me to acknowledge the work of the members of the committee, drawing from various government departments, and including among that committee our Chief Personnel Officer, Ms. Sherry Dane Warner, our Director of Audit, Mrs. Carla Pike, Mr. Andrew Skerritt, Permanent Secretary Office of the Prime Minister, Mr. Ron Dublin Collins, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Agriculture, Mrs. Versalie Francis, Director of Fiscal Affairs, the Ministry of Finance, Ms. Nishama Rattan Mack, Crown Counsel, Ministry of Legal Affairs, Mr. Emil Green, Coordinator of the Skills Training STEP Program, and Ms. Shermel James, our Labor Commissioner. And she would have replaced Ms. Sharon Rattan, who was reassigned following the reassignment to another ministry. The committee is also supported by a number of staff from the Accountant General Department, the Office of the Chief Personnel Officer, and the STEP Secretariat. I am fully prepared to respond to your questions and also to benefit from your contributions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Accountant General. I'll now turn to the Labor Commissioner, Ms. Chanel James, to give her opening remarks.
Good evening, everyone. It is indeed a pleasure for me to be here this evening, and I wish to thank the Honorable Prime Minister for affording me the opportunity to address the nation in respect to labor matters and what the Department of Labor does. The Department of Labor on both St. Kitts and Nevis are the principal agencies responsible for the execution and coordination of all labor administration function, creating a harmonious working relationship between both workers and management in a number of ways. The Department of Labor functions under the ILO Convention number 150 and Recommendation 158 concerning the role, function, and organization of the Department of Labor, giving guidelines laying down the framework in which we operate. The areas in which the Department of Labor operates include employment service, which include local and foreign employment, occupational safety and health and labor inspection, labor research and statistics, social protection, international relations, public education, advisory service, and administration and finance. The Department of Labor offers several services to help job seekers and businesses within the Federation. The employment service operation include the following service: that of local and foreign employment. On the local level, the Department of Labor matches suitable job seekers with employers based on their skill set and their emotional and social intelligence. Presently, we have at the Labor Department vacancies for a forklift driver, landscapers, retail replenishers, cashier, retail supervisor, a marketing agent, and a cleaner. Interested job seekers can contact the Department of Labor. The other area under employment include the Canada Caribbean Agriculture Seasonal Workers Program and the Agriculture Ag Stream. Presently, St. Kitts and Nevis has a total of 39 workers in Canada on the Canada Agriculture Stream, or as we would call it, the Ag Stream. 20 workers are on a 2-year contract which commenced in 2019 and ends in 2021. They are employed on a medical marijuana farm. 19 workers joined the program this year on a 3-month contract. 14 of them, their contract were extended for an additional 6 months to 1 year, and 7 will be repatriated back to St. Kitts and Nevis on Saturday, 17th October. These workers were employed in greenhouses and nurseries. With respect to social protection, the Department of Labor administers under its Social Protection Unit 2 schemes. And these schemes are designed to reduce poverty and the vulnerability of our workers. And so we administer the Severance Payment Fund and the Long Service Gratuity Scheme. As a result of the global pandemic and the closure of our borders, many industries were reduced or forced to close. Some went on reduced hours and reduced pay. 2 of the most affected areas included the hotel, restaurant and tourism sector and the manufacturing sector. However, we realize a number of small businesses were impacted and many of these closed operations. As of the 12th of October, the total number of claims received at the Department of Labor is 1,855 claims. The department have been working tirelessly during the weeks on overtime, on a weekend, even on public holiday, to process these claims in ready for payment. To date, we have processed at least 620 of these claims, and these were persons employed in the hotel tourism sector, as these were the most affected workers who are still presently out of a job. Government infused the Severance Payment Fund with an amount of $11.1 million, and to date we have paid out roughly 250 claims. We are still going through the process because, as we would have realized, to ensure that there is clarity, and as well as to ensure that these claims meet the requirement, additional steps were added by our Department of Labor based upon recommendation of the Director of Audit, the Accountant General Department, and the Ministry of Finance. And so it takes a longer time in terms of when a claim will be received at the Department of Labor to the time of payment of these claims. When a claim is submitted to us, we look for, when we receive them, completed claim forms. We also we ask for a copy of the claim on Social Security identification card, letters of termination or letters of layoff, and a copy of the claim on Social Security contribution statement. The processing claim includes documentation of the claim when it arrives at the Department of Labor, and this is added to a database. We also look for the case validity, which includes this claim, whether it's a legitimate claim or hoax claim. And we also take the opportunity to prepare a file jacket for this claim. The claim then go on for investigation. Once it had been investigated using the Social Security contribution statement, which means that the preparer will have to go through each claim for all the years the worker would have presented on the claim form. Once that have been verified, it's then calculated. After the calculation process, the claim is then verified by one of the verifiers at the Department of Labor, and we have 4 of them to date. Once it has been verified in accordance with the law, the Labor Commissioner, who is given that authority under the law, then approves the claim. The claims then go on for further verification through the Ministry of Finance. Once it would return, it then goes to the Accountant General Department, where it's further verified again. Once this verification process is completed, the claims go through the ITMS system, government ITMS system, and payment is made by check. Once that check has been put to the system, the Department of Labor prepares the necessary documentation. We will call persons in by appointment. They will receive the necessary letter, which would outline the status of their claim, how it was processed, how the amount they would receive, etc. And then, if they have any sort of queries, we would answer same. It must be noted, as I stated earlier, that to protect the integrity of the processing claim, we would have introduced additional steps, and this is why it is taking a little bit longer for a number of claims to process. The process is manual, and so it takes some time, and the Department of Labor apologizes to those persons who would have put in claims since May and have not received any payment to date. But I would like to assure persons that all claims that came in from May until August 31st would have gone through the processing stage. At this point in time, the Severance Payment Fund is going through an actuary review. Some was done in 2018, but the scope has been widened, and so it is going to be looking at the validity of the Severance Payment Fund. I end here and by stating if workers, employers, or concerned persons have any question regarding their severance payment claim, feel free to call us. Our number is 467-1100, or you can contact us by cell phone 662-2075. Thank you.
Ms. Shernell James. It is now my pleasure to turn to Prime Minister Dr. the Honorable Timothy Harris to deliver his opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Valencia, and I bid a pleasant good night to all those who are participating through social media in this edition of Leadership Matters. This is intended to be one example of good governance at work, one example of the government expanding its accountability mandate by providing opportunities for our people to engage with the leadership of the government of St. Kitts and Nevis across some 5+ platforms of ZIZ, radio and TV. We each week engage over 15,000 viewers to this program, and we are encouraged by the high level of interest. Tonight I want to thank the panelists who are here to be part of an interesting discussion as we examine the labor sector in tonight's edition of Leadership Matters. The COVID-19 pandemic has caused a dramatic decline in the economic growth around the world, and St. Kitts and Nevis is no exception. Indeed, all countries, be they small, medium, or large, were and still are negatively affected by the pandemic. Here in St. Kitts and Nevis, the second quarter of 2020 witnessed the closure of our manufacturing plant and our tourism industry. Luckily for us, our manufacturing plant is now back to about 90% of its pre-COVID-19 employment level, and our tourism industry will reopen on October 31st, 2020, with our hotels and guest houses recalling some of their workers back to the job. To help our employees keep their heads above water, my government provided several relief and social safety net measures, including the waiver of water payments for some 6 months, April to September, to those who suffered loss of income as a result of COVID-19. We instituted a moratorium on electricity payments for some 6 months, a moratorium to those with mortgages with commercial banks. To date, we are advised that over 2,000 holders of mortgages valued at over $400 million have benefited from this program. We have facilitated an additional 940 persons who lost incomes due to COVID-19 on the PAP program. The PAP beneficiaries count peaked at about 5,800 as more households lost their breadwinners and applied to the Sustainable Development to become enrolled as a recipient of the PAP program. Up to September 2020, my government has paid out $23 million for the year so far in poverty alleviation stipends to assist the poor and vulnerable in our midst. In addition, with the $1,000 per month stimulus package being paid by the Social Security Board over the last, or at least the first 3 months, April to June, a further $20.6 million would have been paid to qualified persons. I want to record my appreciation, and I do so now, to the employees of the Ministry of Sustainable Development, the Treasury Department, the Social Security Board, and the Labor Department for their fine work, which led to over $45 million of direct income support to persons in St. Kitts and Nevis, the majority of whom are in the lower income brackets. Further support has come to our people from the Severance Fund, and although this was left in red by the negligent former regime, my government took the decision, faced with the pandemic, to inject $11.1 million to assist those who were qualified for severance payments. You would have heard the Labor Commissioner report that so far 1,855 claims have been made for severance payment, and 620 have completed the necessary processing requirements and are ready for payment. Significant claims have been processed from the Marriott Hotel, OTI Hotel, Park Hyatt Hotel, Four Seasons Resort, Nisbet Plantation, TDC Airlines, Caribel Batik, Delisle Walwyn, including particularly Contours, Vacation Tours, and Sky Safari, to name some of the entities in the tourism sector. Of course, claims have been received and are being processed for workers in the manufacturing and construction industries. In sum, progress is being made. A caring government is helping our people during this very difficult time. We could have said that there was no money in the severance fund. Instead, we invested 11.1 million to help our people. Last week, someone WhatsApped from Nevis to ask how much money had been put into the fund by the NIA. The simple answer is that the workers, whether the workers are from Nevis or on St. Kitts, the federal government is carrying the burden of the $11.1 million to facilitate the severance payment. We would have heard tonight from the Labor Commissioner that the government has sought professional advice of an actuary and how we can make the fund more sustainable in the future. And we wait, of course, that investigation and report by the actuary. This report, when received, will be discussed with the tripartite committee and the public before action is taken. Against this backdrop of the impact of COVID-19 and employment in St. Kitts and Nevis, and you'd have heard the Director of Social Security reported that about 1,500 employees are yet to resume work. We will, of course, pay particular attention to reforms in the public sector. And indeed, we have already appointed Ambassador, His Excellency Van Semri, to lead that particular endeavor. Significantly, as we look at the labor market tonight, we would have discussed the skills training empowerment program and how we want to improve productivity and efficiency and the effectiveness of the services being provided. The Accountant General would have addressed the matter of the government auxiliary employees and indeed the step workers. And we would have heard from the Labor Commissioner comments regarding the broad role which the Labor Department should play in industrial and labor relations in the country and indeed in stabilizing the labor market. So there is much of interest tonight. And against the discussions of what is happening in the labor market is the issue of performance pay, which we have introduced earlier in the discussions on one of the Leadership Matters program. Ultimately, in the context of the challenges of COVID-19, employers everywhere, including the government of St. Kitts and Nevis, has to reconsider the way in which we organize, the way in which people work, the technology that has been applied to work relations in St. Kitts and Nevis. The big issue will be, are we getting value for money? COVID-19 has exposed the fact that across several departments of the government, we are, as it were, overstaffed. And we certainly have to revisit that in the context of the future developments in labor relations in St. Kitts and Nevis. I am very pleased tonight to have heard from the Director of Social Security, Mr. Antonio Maynard, to have heard Mr. Levi Batcher, our Accountant General, and Ms. Shernal James, our Labor Commissioner. And I'm satisfied that the respective entities in which they are engaged has outstanding leadership to take us to a stronger and safer future. I look forward to a very productive evening on tonight's edition of Leadership Matters. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Prime Minister. We will take a break. When we come back, the panelists will address your questions. Kindly focus them on Social Security, employment, or labor-related matters, including the move to regularize two major categories of public sector employees, namely our government auxiliary employees known as GAEs, and workers on the skills Training and Empowerment Program, STEP. The call-in numbers are 869-466-2666, 662-8674, 767-4765, and our overseas line is 239-645-4500. Questions can also be sent via WhatsApp to 869-661-5683. However, first preference will be given to those who phone in to the program. We'll be back after a break.
When you feel a sneeze or a cough coming, try to prevent sneezing or coughing into your hands, as this will contaminate your hands and spread germs. Covering your mouth prevents the spread of germs. You probably knew that, but the way you cover up also matters. And that means breaking a habit you've done all your life. Cover your mouth and nose with flexed elbow or a tissue, not your hands. Discard the used tissue in an appropriate bin immediately. Then, wash your hands with soap and running water to help stop the spread of germs. Turn on water. Wet hands. Apply soap and lather up. Focus on washing your hands for at least 20 seconds. Wash the front of your hands, the back, between fingers and around the nails. Rinse hands under running water. Use something clean to wipe your hands, preferably a disposable paper towel. The best way to wash your hands is using running water and soap, but sometimes we don't have that available. When not available, use hand sanitizer that should have at least 60% alcohol content. Your health is your responsibility. This message was brought to you by the Ministry of Health, St. Kitts.
My name is Carla Astafan, and I have been a potter for over 20 years. I know it's a very difficult time for all of us in the industry, but this time has given me the opportunity to really rethink the whole operation. It's given me time to do other things, to do my pottery. I'm trying to stockpile on my work. To my brothers and sisters in the tourism industry, this is a time to look towards the future. This is a time to examine what you have been doing, see what new things you can do, how you can diversify, how you can innovate, plan ahead. So with proper planning, we will all be prosperous in the future.
As we get ready to serve, it is important that we improve our vehicles to ensure the safety of our guests and ourselves. Outfit your vehicle with appropriate dividers to separate driver from passenger. Plexiglass or Velcro plastic divider may be used. Have a minimum of 2 hand sanitizers, one for you and one for your guests. Always carry extra mask and disinfectant in your vehicle. And post signs to remind passengers to use hand sanitizers and wear their mask and follow social distancing protocols.
When providing a service, it is important that the hands of the passengers are sanitized before entering the vehicle. Remember, a mask must always be worn by all occupants of the vehicle for the duration of the trip. At the end of the trip, remember to wish your passengers a good day. Ensure they have left no personal items behind and sanitize their hands.
Once you have completed your trip, remember to sanitize your hands and your vehicle. Seats must be disinfected and all high-touch areas, such as doors and seat handles, must be sanitized before your next trip. Let's do all we can to keep ourselves and our visitors safe.
We are all in this together.
And we all have a part to play to keep our island COVID-free.
Play your part and stay safe and healthy.
Our borders will soon be reopened. Get ready.
So what are you doing to keep St. Kitts COVID-free?
Welcome back to Leadership Matters. We have a call on hold. Good night. You're live on Leadership Matters. What's your question, please?
Hello, good night.
Good night.
Good night to the Honorable Prime Minister. Welcome on another Leadership Matters. And good night to the panelists, yourself, Ms. Grant, Mr. James, Ms. Shamel James, and Mr. Anthony Maynard. Mr. Prime Minister, you have a lot of persons tonight, so I'll try to make it a brief. Mr. James, in terms of the auxiliary workers moving over to government workers, maybe in your wrap-up, can you kind of shed some light? And if, because persons are asking me, when they come over to the government, do they commit all their years? So, for example, you have a few elderly workers, people up in the age, who are ready to go home, but are waiting to seek enroll in that benefit. So what they want to know is after they get into government, right, how soon after they will be able to resign, and also how will their medical checks affect them. To Ms. Shomel James, Labour Commissioner, is there a criteria where, what is the criteria for persons traveling to Canada, right? And then to Mr. Maynard. Mr. Maynard, thank you very much for gathering that stimulus package. A lot of persons are able to benefit. A lot of persons are able to now come on board with self-employment, especially the taxi guys. They are the ones who was really crying out, and the bus drivers. And I'm happy to hear that they are now being part of the self-employment program at Social Security. Very quickly, how are matters handled with delinquent employers who do not pay their contributions, and how would it affect paying out to the employees? I will continue to listen, and Mr. Prime Minister, you continue doing a good job, continue building good health and strength. As the border open, I know you have everything covered, so continue to keep the good work, and we are behind you.
Thank you very much, caller. Just to refresh your memories, we have, of course, Prime Minister Dr. the Honorable Timothy Harris here tonight. We also have the Accountant General and the Chairman of the STEP Regularization and Pensions Reform Committee, Mr. Levi Bradshaw. We have the Labor Commissioner, Ms. Chanel James, and the Director of the St. Christopher and Nevis Social Security Board, Mr. Antonio Maynard. I will turn to, we don't have any more phone calls right now, so I will turn to Mr. Levi Bradshaw. There were a few questions for you. I'll turn to you for you to address them, please, sir.
Thank you very much, caller. Your questions. As it relates to the question as to the years of service of those persons who will be transitioning, there are two basic categories. One, as it relates to those existing government GAE employees, what we are trying to achieve with these two initiatives is, one, to establish the GAE Commission so they can be properly appointed. a number of persons who have been in the service for an extended period of time. And the GAE Commission will ensure that these persons are properly appointed. The existing workers in the system currently would be eligible upon retirement at the age of 62 to a long service gratuity. So there is no need to wait around. If you're ready to go, you can go now, because you would have made significant contribution to the development of our country. And for your service, you are now entitled to your long service gratuity. Upon the regularization of the pensions, the contributory pension plan, further details will be provided to you as to what your entitlements would be, as the date for when that particular bit of legislation will be brought into force, you'll be further advised. As we indicated, that the plan is a plan where we are encouraging persons who are employed in the public service. It's a contributory plan. And your contribution to the plan is matched by the employer, which is the government of St. Kitts and Nevis. As it relates to those persons who will be transitioned into the government as auxiliary workers, we indicated again that the transition process would entail that persons would have to be properly evaluated. We don't intend to bring persons with a bad attitude into the public service. We don't intend to bring ghost workers into the public service. What we intend to do is to bring persons who are determined to contribute meaningfully to the development of our country. In this regard, the government would have made the decision that those persons on the STEP program, when they are regularized, they would be regularized effective the first day of July 2020. The process has not completed yet, has not been completed. But we are saying if somebody is regularized next week, the 21st of October, that appointment will be backdated to the first day of July 2020. Thank you for your questions.
Thank you very much, sir. There was a question for Mr. Antonio Maynard, the director of the St. Christopher and Nevis Social Security Board. Before I turn to you, Mr. Maynard, I just want to say that I was very happy to hear you address the payments for September. A lot of our audience members have been asking about that. So just in case you tuned in late, Mr. Maynard mentioned that payments started on the 25th of September and up to yesterday, October 12th. He said we have paid out of the September allotment a total of more than $1.5 million, covering over 1,500 persons from both St. Kitts and Nevis. So that's very good to hear. Mr. Maynard?
Certainly. Thank you very much again, Ms. Grant. For self-employed persons, once you are registered, you will be eligible for the COVID payment, even if you are not necessarily up to date with your payments. However, we encourage you to be compliant and to pay on time and consistently. In fact, since COVID, we have realized an increase in the registration of self-employed persons, and this is a good thing for us at Social Security and for the self-employed persons. Of course, once employees were laid off and once their income have been impacted, then they too was and still is eligible for this payment.
Thank you very much, sir. Also, we have a phone call. Good night, you're live on Leadership Matters.
A pleasant good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, and especially to the panel there, especially my old-time teacher, Mr. Bratcher. I would like to ask a question direct to the person who's in charge of the severance packages, I think it's Ms. James, concerning, I noticed that, well, firstly, I know there was some movements in terms of relocating of the Labor Department up to the new place of business, which might have caused some delay also. And what I have noticed, because I know directly it's not only me, and I have heard a lot of other people, in terms of the payment, it seems as if, I don't know, what has happened is that you have found that most of the people who have seemed to be getting through in terms of getting payments, I know it's going to be a long procedure and there are thousands of people to seem to have made application for the severance. Because I have put in my application. It has been 7 months that I have been unemployed because the small business that I use, it was actually only me alone who was been working with that company who was being made redundant. And up until today, it seems as if it's only the resorts alone, these people in the Marriott and these other hotels have been called. What about the small man or woman who has been in these little small private entities that have been closed? You're not hearing up to today. I spoke, and when I called to ask the question there, because I said, let me speak there first before I call you tonight, and the response I received from the people, it was just as if, Mister, just wait until we call you. When we call you, we would. But I mean, I know it's going to take some time, and it is 7 months that I've been sitting at home. Can I get an employment up to now? And you mean not even a call? I have not even gone to the second layer of where you would fill this letter, where you would get a call to do this letter, where you would have had. I only took in the letter, that's all. And I keep calling, and they're saying, oh, it's on file. And then I waited until they have moved. Because even to call, they don't even have the lines all set up, so you have to call the cell. So I'm trying to find out what is it. If they're really looking at the smaller businesses, because it seems as if all you're hearing is the hotel workers. They're the ones who are getting the claims settled and so forth. And to be surprised, because I know directly of 5 persons. One, they received the last set of $1,000 that was paid. They're on the poverty thing, which Mr. Harris, Prime Minister Harris, had spoke about. Some people were getting all these different grants, assistance, and they're trying to remove some. They also have received their severance payment and getting ready to go back to work on the 31st of October in some of the resorts that are open. And what about small people like me? Up until now, you can't, and where you like to have 1 and 3, 4 people in an establishment. So I'm just trying to listen up here to see what.
Yes, okay, thank you. Thank you very much. We have an additional caller. Good night, caller. You're live on Leadership Matters.
Good night, Ms. Brian.
Good night.
And good night to the Honorable Prime Minister.
Good night.
And good night to your panelists there from the Social Security Director and the others there. Want to commend you to come and inform the people about the stimulus package and other things about the Labour Department. Now, Mr. Prime Minister, now when I listen to some people cry, you understand that they ain't working and all those things. We know that the COVID caused a lot of things, caused a lot of business to close down. And you're trying your best with the tax stimulus package from the Social Security. And, you only could do as much. The government only could do as much. But you got some people out there who wouldn't go try nothing, do nothing at all. When anytime I go in town, I meet the Guyanese them, and they were selling, doing something. I see the Indians them, some of them working with the Chinese them now. And, different things. Some people trying things with themselves, people creating things with themselves. So nobody know how long this COVID is going to take. Going to start around. And I believe that as citizens of this country, we got to go back to something. We got to go back to something. We got to go back to put one in the soil and do something for us to create something for yourself. Because government can't give. The hospital, the police station, the police, the nurses, the doctors, the schools, and all them things that the government got to create for. You understand? So I do not think, I don't know what to some people. Just complaining. Find something else to do so long. Anyway, you have a wonderful night. God bless.
Thank you, caller. We have another caller on hold. Good night, caller. You're live on Leadership Matters.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Good evening, Ms. Grant, and good evening, Mr. Prime Minister, Mr. Maynard, and the other members on the panel there. Mr. Prime Minister, I just called to tell you thanks for the way that you have led this country and you are leading it. You have done a wonderful job, and you are doing a wonderful job. And keep it up. And may God bless you, but I have something to say now. Not pertaining, well, this is pertaining to laboring, but not the legal way. It is said that our country is a Christian society. And we all know that from way back, because we were taught to respect God. Turn down your volume in there, man. And all of a sudden, that Christian society behavior has gone out the door. It is drawn to my attention from more than one person that there are a certain group of people in this country here. They are doing illegal stuff, what you call prostituting, selling the body for money, and it is like a shop where people lining up to go in there for the business. And we're not going to live with that kind of behavior around here, Mr. Prime Minister. We're not doing it because our country not accustomed to that kind of behavior, and it is a bad example for young boys who not yet come to an adult stage where they can choose a partner, female partner, and marry to that person. So since they cannot do that, they will gladly go there and pay the money to get what they want. And
I apologize. Sorry, we lost that caller. We have 3 callers on hold, so I advise you please to just make it a little brief. Thank you. Good night, caller. You're live on Leadership Matters.
Hello?
Good night. Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead, please.
Yes, good evening. This is for the Director of Social Security and the Prime Minister. A few months ago, I was at the credit union, and there was a guy there, and they needed an ID. And they asked him if he had a Social Security card, and he said no. And then later on, he told me that he has never paid Social Security in his life, and they're not getting his money. Now, I'm hearing that persons who never contributed receive money from Social Security, and that is wrong. If you don't put in any money, you should not be looking at getting any money. So the government is wrong to take up Social Security money and give people who never contributed. That should come from the Treasury. So I would like them to, if they're doing it, to stop it. That is not right. Thank you.
Caller. Good night, caller. You're live on Leadership Matters. Good night, caller.
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, good evening to the panel there. Yeah, I coined a phrase. It's not really a new phrase, but I think I need the Prime Minister to start using this phrase a little bit more. Old time something, come back again. The citizens of St. Kitts and Nevis need to realize that they got to go back to some of them old ways and them old habits in order for them to survive to this period. And just have a side question, whoever is taking the agricultural questions, what type of mechanism is the government putting in place to help the farmers market and sell their products? And that's my contribution for the night.
Thank you, sir. Good night. Caller, you're live on Leadership Matters.
Good evening, Mr. Prime Minister and your staff, what you have on the panel with you. I just want to congratulate you for bringing the public aware of how leadership matters every week. So God bless your panel, and bless the government of St. Kitts and Nevis, and continue, Mr. Prime Minister, to continue with the good work you're doing. God bless you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. God bless you too. We have a final caller. Good night, caller. You're live on Leadership Matters. Good night, caller.
Good night.
Hi, good night. Go ahead, please.
Good night, Mr. Prime Minister, and everybody else who there. Since last week, I want to ask you this question. This is Mr. Paul. Now the border going to be opening, and a lot of people going to be coming home. And now we got free movement between St. Kitts and Nevis. So when all these people come home, I know some people going to come home and looking at job. So I know private sector I can't take everybody, and you know you're up to your neck. So we are now petition and division is first preference. So how do you think we're going to work out this thing here? Because other people can come back home, I understand. And everybody can come back home with a pocket full of money. Somebody wants a job. So I want to know what's going to happen to the country. Because a lot of people come here and you can't stop petition and division from coming home. And now you're going to see them get something. I mean, somebody going to be talented to do something on their own. But I know people going to come to you. And I know you're going to be in a lot of strain. So I might have to come in and help you with some of them kind of what to do and what not to do. You understand? So you take it easy, Prime Minister, because I know it's going to be, Well, I always, so, because, for me age, I could cool out and thing and so, but I know people going to come home and want something. So I know it'll be hard. We part the money be England and America, we part people coming from and also, if up that ball for money and up there print money, we're going to be down here. Or we print money. And if no boat and plane are coming, you know how we go. All right, Mr. Prime Minister, all the best. Good night.
Thank you very much, sir. We have 2 additional callers. I'll take those calls and then I'll have the panel address the questions that were raised. Good night, caller. You're live on Leadership Matters. Good night, caller.
Good night, Madam Moderator.
Hi, good night.
Allow me to adopt the protocols that were set before me as I direct my concern to the Honorable Prime Minister. Honorable Prime Minister, I was employed for 12 years and months, that is, 3rd September 2007 to the 31st October 2019, as a teacher by the Board of Management of an institution. I was appointed and permanent establishment of the institution effective from 3rd December 2007 as per letter dated 20th January 2008. Hence, I was guaranteed security of tenure. In July 2019, I was served a 1-year employment contract dated 10th July 2019 for my execution by 9th August 2019. I expressed my dissatisfaction with the employment contract. Subsequently, I was served a revised contract with amended remuneration clause dated 10th July 2019 and correspondence dated 8th October 2019. It stated, and I quote, "Your willingness to agree to the terms of the contract of employment should be shown in the signing of the contract on Tuesday, 15th October 2019, at a time and place to be agreed upon." End of quote. The time and place, Mr. Prime Minister, was never agreed since there was an unwillingness to address my concerns. Therefore, the offer for the revised unilateral contract was terminated due to passage of time. I was served a suspension letter on the 18th October 2019 and a registered dismissal letter dated 30th October 2019. The crux of my grievances, Honorable Prime Minister, are: 1. The 1-year contract has a clause that states, and I quote, "The board shall have the right to suspend or dismiss the teacher at any time with or without cause." End of quote. This clause is in breach of the ILO's International Labour Standards of Employment Security and Sanctions and Leavings Protection of Employment Act. Number 2, I never received a warning letter during my tenure, and I was rated an outstanding teacher. Therefore, I do not humane treatment. Prime Minister, I hired a lawyer to assist with the settlement of this matter, and the chairman of the school board refused to address the matter. I filed my case with the Labour Department, and I was informed by the Labour Department that they cannot find the chairman of the school board. Mr. Prime Minister, what I just said, the supporting documents are in the Labour Department. Honorable Prime Minister, and dismissed because I refused to execute an employment contract with terms injurious to me. Mr. Prime Minister, I am kindly asking to have a meeting with you at your convenience as it relates to this catastrophic matter. Thanks in advance. Kind regards, Empress Stanley. Good night and God bless. I will
Good night, caller. God bless you too. I'll take a final call and then we'll go to the panelists. We'll open the lines at a later point in time. Good night, caller. You're live on Leadership Matters.
Hi, good night.
Good night.
Yeah, I'm speaking on behalf of the Nevis for 4 seasons. The workers, we have been home for 3 months now, and every time we call, they're telling us that we'll be getting a package. The last time they said we'll be getting it on the 25th of September. We are now in October. So we're trying to find out what is the problem with Nevis. Nevis not getting their fair share.
Okay, thank you, caller.
Hello?
Yes.
I called this afternoon and the lady said that the check is there, but they're waiting on a call to say whether or not to give out the checks.
Okay, thank you for raising that matter with us. I will have the Labor Commissioner, Ms. Chanel James, address that, as well as other questions and matters that have been raised. Thank you for calling. Okay, we've had a number of questions. I'll turn to Ms. Chanel James, the Labor Commissioner, to address some of the matters that have been raised.
I would like to address first the issue when the caller called in reference to the criteria set out for persons being part of the Canada Caribbean Seasonal Agricultural Workers Program. First, you must be registered with the Department of Labor. You must be a born citizen of St. Kitts and Nevis between the ages 25 to 55. You must have no criminal record and have agriculture or farming experience. In respect to the delinquent employers and for workers who would have submitted severance payment claim, these workers should not be meant to suffer because their employer would have been delinquent. And because of that, provision was made under the law for these workers to petition by the Labor Commissioner to the Minister of Labor for them to receive same. We would have received a number of these claims, and these claims were then forwarded to the Minister of Labor for her consideration in this matter. In the meantime, we would have contacted the Social Security Board for them to speak with these employers and for them to be put on a payment plan. Because, as I said, the workers should not meant to be suffer because the employers have been delinquent. With delayed payments for those in the small business sector, it was not intentional, but with the Department of Labor looked at the youth workers who was most affected and decided that we would go first with those workers in the hotel and tourism sector. We are working on all other claims at this time. It is going to take a little time, but we, as I said, we do apologize. And if you can call me tomorrow, the worker, I will look into that matter and see how best I can help you in resolving that case.
Someone had asked about 4 seasons.
On the you would like me to address. Okay. A worker called in respect to if the worker would have worked with a company for 9 years and taken a break for some months and went back to work with the same company, if that person will recover the years of service. In accordance with the law, if your break is more than 6 months, anything before that break is disregarded, unless you have a valid reason for that break. For example, a person might have been on study leave with pay or without pay, consideration is given. If that person would have been on medical leave for an extended period of time, consideration will be given for those years of service prior to that break.
Thank you very much. One or two persons addressed the whole idea of stimulus, and I just want to remind the audience that the government of St. Kitts and Nevis mobilized quite a comprehensive stimulus plan of approximately $120 million. And under that, the Prime Minister, the Honorable Prime Minister, announced an additional $5 million to support the poverty alleviation program. For those of you who may have missed the Honorable Prime Minister's opening remarks, he announced that up to September 2020, the government has paid out $23 million in poverty alleviation stipends to assist the poor and vulnerable in our midst. There was a caller who also asked about farmers, anything that's being done to assist the farmers. And back in late March, when the Honorable Prime Minister announced the stimulus plan, he said that there would be $10 million to boost production in the agriculture sector. I turn to the Honorable Prime Minister to address this and any other matters that have been raised.
Thank you. Significant investment in the agricultural sector, both with respect to crop, livestock, and the fisheries subsector. We have provided extensive support with the provision of land, support with the assistance in fencing the lands of those who would already have production activities going, support in terms of input for the treatment of livestock. The range of support we have given to agriculture this year has been outstanding by any measure. We have equally given support to those who are involved in the fisheries sector, and a range of items support has been provided for. So between the crops and the livestock sector, I think it's about some 5 million had been expended directly. The Agriculture Department additionally would have paid private persons, operators, to undertake the harrowing of farmlands. Tomorrow another significant development takes place when we officially launch the Bayfords Farm, and to put back Bayfords into active use to support the farming community. So we are very optimistic about the future for agriculture. COVID-19 dramatized the importance of food security. We need to have more people involved in agriculture, both at the level of the backyard gardening to actual commercial type developments, and we are encouraging that. We have reserved over 100 plus acres of land to ensure that those who want to engage in agriculture, they certainly can do so. And we look at agriculture broadly, including we want to encourage support for agro-processing, and that is an area that we hope in due course we will have some significant development there. We want to commend the young people, those who are part of the alternative program, who have engaged in the development of farm and are in fact now significant producers of agricultural products. We have farms all over the country. In particular, I want to hail the farm that had been developed in the Keon community as one of those in which significant talent had been displayed, and we want to encourage those more persons to become involved in farming and in fishing. There is a high demand for local products. We want to encourage that those prices be competitive so that those who naturally and instinctively are given to buy local can have the best value for their monies. With respect to the issue raised by the caller who was a teacher at one of our schools in Boston, private schools. I'm advised by the Labor Commissioner that she is actively addressing this matter, and therefore I would ask that tomorrow perhaps you can make direct contact with Ms. Shernell James, who is the Labor Commissioner, and we will take it from there afterwards. If you are not appropriately advised and satisfied, then you can make contact with me via telephone 762-1558, 762-1558. John Paul raised the issue of our nationals returning. We certainly would welcome them and encourage them to get involved in productive endeavors. He has offered a willingness to help should there be difficulties, and I certainly would be blessed to receive all the help we can at this particular challenging moment. But we are looking forward to having our families united and our people come back home. I just want to commend the caller who spoke to the need for persons, offer a word of encouragement. I think it could have been Mr. Politics. And one of the things we have to do in difficult times is really to become more industrious and more sharper in terms of using our talents and our gifts. Many years back, in a difficult period in Jamaica, when the subjects then had petitioned the Queen to the governor and asked how would she assist in their amelioration, the answer that came back is still a valid one for us now. It is to their industry and ingenuity that the subjects must look for their own amelioration. The message from that is that we have to help ourselves. That is how life starts, with our taking the steps and seeking support for others to assist us, to enable us, to empower us. Those who are in particular jobs and are now displaced as a result of COVID-19 and other factors should look for alternatives. Can you use that skill you had at that particular workplace to develop some venture to engage in self-employment? Are there additional new skills or old skills that you can now put into productive use? Unless we begin to think inside and outside the box, unless we become innovative, we are not going to be well prepared to face an uncertain future. So I like the encouragement that we have to get people to try other things, try new things, as they attempt to maneuver what is a very difficult circumstance all over the world, in the United Kingdom, in America, in Europe. COVID-19 has given a very significant blow to all countries. United States of America, over 30 million people were put out of work. Significant. Everywhere in Europe, the challenge is the same. How do we open economies safely, and how do we get our employees repositioned to the new future of living with COVID? So that encouragement that has come from the caller is one that we want to hear resonating time after time in the country. Look for new opportunities to expand your business. If you are in self-employment, look for new ideas in which to try. We are fortunate at this time, and I was heartened when, I think it was on the 5th of October, the central bank launched a partial credit guarantee scheme. This will ensure that to those who hitherto had a difficulty finding the collateral in support of their loan, 75% of that collateral now, up to a total of 300,000 or a loan of 300,000, will be made available to the Partial Credit Guarantee Corporation. So this now is a significant support given to financing for very small businesses, for medium-sized businesses, and we hope as that is built out, starting firstly with National Bank, and by the end of the month, I gather that this support will also be available to the credit unions and the development bank. So a significant challenge which small businesses and small people face, that of finding collateral that in part will be satisfied significantly up to $300,000. So these things are going to help to spur entrepreneurship, spur engagement into enterprise by our people, and we want to encourage our people to take note of these, get more information, and do the best that they can with respect to this particular matter. The matter raised by the caller from Sadler's regarding the place of the one man, two person, three persons working in small entities, and they are in the queue to receive severance payment, is one which we have to address. And in that regard, I want to encourage the Labor Commissioner to ensure that none is left behind, and that these small people in particular, there may be one, there may be two, but for them, their payment is as important as those who are in large companies. And we certainly would not wish any preference be given to employees from large companies against small ones. Each claim is a claim that needs to be addressed in the soonest possible time. That is the philosophy by which the government would operate. That is what we would encourage. And I want, on that note, to commend the staff of the department, though, who has been going out regular intervals, even on weekends, and to encourage, particularly with respect of some of the feedback we have had tonight, that they devote the weekends to these, and during the week, but a special place we ensure that we are targeting persons whose claim had been there long, and persons who are not, as it were, part and parcel of the larger corporation, while we move all. In other words, every claim must be moved. And one good way may be a first come, first serve basis. That would be fair in terms of the waiting period. So these matters will be taken into account, and we are, well, heartened by the information that is coming so that we can improve the delivery of government service. I think those were the areas of relevance to the office of the Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable Prime Minister. We've received a few WhatsApps. I'd like to read a couple of them. Before I do, I'd like to advise the audience, please refrain from phoning. I think it's best to phone 762-1558 tomorrow instead of during the show. So you're welcome to call back 762-1558 tomorrow. I'll read a couple of these WhatsApps. Mr. McIntosh, he says, "Good night. You are a great man, and I thank God for you every day. We pray for you, Mr. PM." The person who WhatsApped in last week asking about the VAT day or days 2020 is being persistent. He said, "Good night. I started listening late. Did you answer my question about VAT day or days 2020?" So the Prime Minister did mention that would be addressed sometime soon. Just to also remind you that the government of St. Kitts and Nevis has also done quite a lot in addition to what Mr. Bradshaw mentioned, the government has done quite a lot for the GAEs. In fact, the government of St. Kitts and Nevis restored the holiday pay or honorarium. I believe it's about 2% in December 2018 and December 2019. So that honorarium had been discontinued for some time under the previous administration, but it was implemented again under Prime Minister Harris's administration. And before I go to break, I just want to give a quick anecdote about the late Glenroy McWoodley, who was appointed by the government to represent the government auxiliary employees. In fact, when Prime Minister Harris announced in December 2018 that the holiday pay would be reinstituted, Mr. McWoodley, the late Glenroy McWoodley, may his soul rest in peace, actually tracked the Honorable Prime Minister down, I believe, at an establishment in Phillips's to personally thank him. And then the next year, in December 2019, he also did that. So that's just a little anecdote. We'll go to break, and when we come back, we'll open the lines for a few general questions, and we'll also answer some of the questions that came in via WhatsApp. Okay, so we'll take a quick break and we'll come back.
Thanks to the nation's unified response, the spread of COVID-19 has been contained. St. Kitts and Nevis, therefore, announces the opening of their border on October 31st, 2020. The success of this strategy requires effort on everyone's part. Therefore, self-health management is an important step in this process. Self-health management refers to the measures people take to manage their own health. You and I should remember to wash hands often with soap and water, or use alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Avoid touching your eyes, mouth, and nose. Take your temperature morning and evening. Watch for symptoms. Persons with diabetes or hypertension are reminded to take your medication regularly as prescribed. If you have no symptoms, you may carry out your normal routine and boost your immune system. When you are outside, avoid public spaces and wear a mask at all times. If you develop symptoms, put on a mask and seek medical care. Do not take public transportation. Inform the doctor of your travel history, any contact with confirmed or suspected cases, your occupation, and whether anyone around you has similar symptoms. If you become ill, please rest at home. Wear a mask and isolate yourself from others in your household. If you share a bathroom, disinfect daily using 1 part bleach to 10 parts water. Everyone must work together to reduce the spread of the coronavirus when our border has been opened.
Before touching the mask, clean hands with an alcohol-based hand rub or soap and water. Take the mask and inspect it for tears or holes. Orient which side is the top side where the metal strip is. Ensure the proper side of the mask faces outwards, the colored side. Place the mask to your face. Pinch the metal strip or stiff edge of the mask so it molds to the shape of your nose. Pull down the mask's bottom so it covers your mouth and your chin. After use, take off the mask. Remove the elastic loops from behind the ears while keeping the mask away from your face and clothes. To avoid touching potentially contaminated surfaces of the mask, discard the mask in a closed bin immediately after use.
We have a number of callers on hold, so I'll go straight to the phone lines. Good night, caller. You're live on Leadership Matters.
Hi.
Hi, good night.
Good night, Prime Minister, and good night to everyone there. Prime Minister, good night. How are you?
I am fine, thank you.
This is Miss Unity from St. Croix. And Prime Minister, I have a question to ask because I hear, people keep talking about it and, they tell me to ask. So, this thing with this quarantine, okay? Suppose you have a couple and you come into St. Kitts and you have to quarantine. The two of them staying in the same room. You have to pay two different money, it's one. You have to pay 500 each. 500 cover the two of them since they're staying in one room and there's a couple, married couple. That's one question. And people complaining that, they're waiting to see if the price will drop because they're saying not able to see. And it's saying everybody now working at this time and had a kind of money and they don't prepping themselves to come home. Me for sure. Whether it's cheap or not, if I have the money, I will pay it. Okay? Because St. Kitts is where my heart and I will want to come home for Christmas. So I would like to answer that to me. And I hear John Paul say people coming from overseas coming to you to look for something. But Prime Minister, if you have anything to give, remember me. I don't let people to get fed up on me. But if you have anything to give away, remember me because people overseas just come home to vote too. And then everybody who live in St. Kitts don't get all the favors, and people who overseas like me. I don't vote for nothing. I vote for my country, and if anything there for me in the overseas, I want it just like anybody else. And that is my thing tonight, Prime Minister. I vote from my heart. I don't look for nothing in politics over for 40 years, and I vote in from all years, and I never ask nobody no favor. I don't let people get fed up on me. So, Prime Minister, if you have anything to offer, like you say, remember me. I'm a registered voter, and I vote from my heart, from my country. You have a safe journey home, and everybody, good night.
Good night. Thank you. Good night, caller. You're live on Leadership Matters.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, good evening to everyone in the studio and also listening around the globe. My question is to the Labor Commissioner. Persons who are vending and selling cooked food by the side of the street, are they required to have a certificate from the health department? Because I see people just setting up tents and selling food. I'm not sure whether it is healthy, it is safe, and it seems like some kind of certificate should be displayed so that persons know this is a legitimate person who is qualified to sell food and has gone through all the necessary process to ensure that they're practicing the proper hygiene. God bless. Have a nice evening. Love you, Prime Minister. You're the best. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you. Good night, caller. You're live on Leadership Matters. Caller, good night. You're live on Leadership Matters.
Hello, good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Hi, good evening. I would like to say that I am so proud of my Prime Minister, Dr. Timothy S. Harris. We are proud of you, Prime Minister. My question is to the Director of Social Security. We have a situation where we have been asking the agents of the Office of the Social Security to accept valid letters of termination or furlough. They are stating that because the businesses have been reopened, they expect that the employees have returned to work. But there is no such evidence of that. I want to know, what are you doing to assist in helping the persons receive their stimulus payment? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good night, caller. You're live on Leadership.
Hello.
Hi, good night, caller. You're live on Leadership Matters.
Yes, good evening to everyone here in the program. Yes, my question is to the Prime Minister. Hello?
There's a little feedback.
Hello?
Radio, turn off.
Yes, I turn it down and moving away from it. Okay, yes, my question is to the Prime Minister. Okay, in terms of the assistant to the farmers, right? Does that assistant entail cleaning or clearing of land and the harrowing of the land? And I'm talking about both the regular farmers and the backyard farmers, because I have an alright piece of land, right? And I went to the agriculture department. They told me that I'll be placed in the backyard section of it, backyard farming section of it, of the agriculture state, right? But then I was told also that the agriculture don't clear the land, and sometimes they don't harrow because they don't have tractors doing that. They usually would engage private persons to do it. So I'm asking, does the package that the government or the agriculture department is offering to the farmers entail clearing or cleaning of the land and also harrowing of the land? Thank you.
Thank you, caller. Good night. You're live on Leadership Matters. Do we have a last caller? Good night.
Hello.
Hi, good night. We can hear you. Just ask your question, please.
Hello, good night. Hello.
Can you hear us? Hello? Hello? Can you ask your question, please? You need to move away from the TV or the radio and just ask your question.
Yes. I just want to say something. That I would like to know that the people them like at Marriott is that those that get the seventh, they can resume back to work when the season back up and running.
Okay, thank you, caller. Do we have a final caller? Good night, caller. You're live on Leadership.
Hello?
Yes, hello, good night.
Good night.
Yes, ask your question, please. Hello? Okay, sorry about that. All right, I will turn to the Labor Commissioner, and we're at the point now, it's 9:53, so we're at the point now where we're winding down the program. So I will turn to the panelists to have them address related matters, and then we will go into closing remarks. So I'll turn to the Director of Social Security, Mr. Antonio Maynard, to address some of the matters that were raised. And Mr. Maynard, if you'd like to then go into your closing remarks after that would be fine. Okay.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Let me firstly address the issue of the four-season employees. I want to assure those employees that the stimulus for September will be paid to them. These employees were laid off in August and not necessarily in April, May, and June, but they were actually laid off in August. And so therefore, I was told that checks have already been dispatched to Nevis today for those particular four-season workers. There was a question about someone not getting a stimulus as yet, a young lady. I want to advise her if she's getting or having any issues in receiving her stimulus, please come to our office in person and we'll address the matter. We have paid out over $23 million already, and once you are eligible, once you're qualified for these payments, you will be paid. Let me conclude by saying that the Social Security and its management team, the board, should not only be commended for identifying and making these funds available for the displaced workers, but should also be applauded for executing and delivering such enormous magnitude of payments in such short period of time. This was done under very complicated and difficult circumstances and involved going way beyond our normal duties to enable these COVID relief funds to be paid on time. Keep in mind too that the organization must remain compliant with the COVID protocols, especially considering the physical distancing and related measures that we must ever constantly practice to keep ourselves, our clients, and the community safe. The Social Security Board and management should also be commended for its steadfast commitment to its insured employees and to its contribution in stabilizing the economy in these times of need and in this global pandemic. The organization rose to the occasion at this particular moment in time and contributed tangibly and meaningfully to alleviating the serious financial burdens imposed on our people by the COVID global pandemic. We are happy to exercise the leadership that matters in times like these. We applaud the distinguished Prime Minister and his cabinet of government ministers for guiding us comfortably through these rough seas. The Social Security Board has played an integral role in sustaining the economy through the installation of these COVID funds. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Maynard. I'll turn to the Accountant General and Chairman of the STEP Regularization and Pensions Reform Committee to make some closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Valencia, and indeed, thank you very much to the Honorable Prime Minister. I'm truly pleased to have been afforded the opportunity to participate in this very important forum, to enlighten the citizens of our country on the work of the STEP Regularization and Pension Reform Committee. You must all know that the implementation of these provisions as it relates to the Pensions Amendment Act and the establishment and operationalizing of the contributory pension plan, and indeed the regularizing of the STEP workers as government auxiliary employees, and indeed the associated benefits, and I can list the benefits. That is, those STEP persons, when they are transitioned, they would be appointed to the public sector. They would benefit for enrollment under the government health insurance scheme at tremendous cost. They would also be entitled for enrollment in the government contributory pension program and be beneficiaries of the long service gratuity. Similarly, there are a number of existing government GAE workers and monthly paid employees who are eagerly awaiting the operationalizing of the pension contributory pension plan. All of these initiatives have been undertaken at tremendous cost to the state, And these costs are even more amplified as we continue to struggle and fight through this period of the COVID-19 pandemic. It demonstrates a commitment by the government to continue to support its citizens. We are pleased that we have been able to be of service to our country in assisting to bring forward these very important initiatives. So I just want to close by expressing my sincere gratitude to the members of my committee for their support, and indeed the members of the supporting team. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you. There were a few questions addressed towards the Labor Commissioner, Ms. Chanel James, both on the phone as well as on WhatsApp. Someone said, good night. Can someone claim severance and still go back to the job if the employer calls you back? And then another questioner said, please, what is the method used for calculating severance payment? Where can we access the labor laws governing the Protection of Employment Act? I'll invite the Labor Commissioner to address these matters and then make her closing remarks.
Thank you, Valencia. In respect to the question where, what is the method for calculating severance payment? The method is outlined in the Protection of Employment Act, Section 3 of the Act, which deals with severance payment. The law says that your earnings for the last 52 weeks is used in the calculation of these claims. It is then divided by the number of weeks worked in that last 52 weeks. Also, multiplied by the number of years that you would have contributed. For example, if you were employed by a company, you worked for 10 years, you were made redundant, if your wages total to amount of maybe 20,000 per that particular year, that is then divided by the number of weeks you would have worked in the last 52 weeks. So if you were to work for 20,000, it would be divided by, for example, 40 weeks to arrive at an average weekly earning. If the average weekly earning is greater than your present weekly wages, the average is used. If it is less, then your week wage will be used. And so that is then multiplied by your years of service. In accordance with the law, anything between 1 to 5 years, you will receive 2 weeks pay for every year that you work. Anything between 6 years to 10 years, you will receive 3 weeks pay for every year that you work. Anything between 11 to 16 years is 4 weeks pay for every year worked. And finally, if you work 17 years and above, you will receive a maximum of 52 weeks that is paid out to you. So if I said first 5 years is 2 weeks, 5 times 2 is 10, second 5 years is 3 weeks, multiply by 5 years, 10 years, plus 15 years is equal to a total of 25 weeks that person would work in such a scenario like that. Where can you access the laws? You have 2 places you can go to. First, or you can through SKNIS on the ground floor of government headquarters. You will get a printed copy for a minimal cost. Or you can access it online by the Law Review Commission website, which you can download at your own convenience. If a person who was made redundant, and redundancy is a form of termination, if you were made redundant, it means that you are no longer working with that company. And you're recalled. The company can recall you in a case like this, because we must remember during COVID-19, we would have been under a state of emergency. it will be considered force majeure. And so the worker then will have a right to go back, but you will go back under a new contract of employment. It may not be the same contract you would have received previously, it could be less, but the Department of Labor is looking at situations like this where a worker would have been laid off or lost their job in a process of force majeure, that they do not lose in terms of their skill set. So we are looking at that, and we will discuss this with the National Tripartite Committee so that special provision can be placed in the Act to protect those workers' rights once they would have been made redundant under force majeure or in the case of a pandemic. At this point in time, I wish to express thanks to my staff at the Department of Labor, who has been going beyond normal working hours to ensure that the claims them are paid out. I wish to thank my minister, who has been very supportive of the staff as we have gone through this process. I also like to thank the Prime Minister, who has been encouraging us during this process and for seeing that these workers who have been made redundant due to no fault of their own receive the necessary payment, although the severance payment fund is in arrears. The government has infused $11.1 million into the fund, and from that we are paying workers. Payment has been made to a number of workers today. The payment is ongoing. As a matter of fact, 50 persons will be called tomorrow to notify them that their payment is ready for payment at the Treasury. And so we ask the public to understand that the process is tedious. We've been looking at the process as a first come, first service basis, because all claims between May or February, as a matter of fact, we have paid out some that came in February, between February to August have been processed and are in the process of going through the ITMS system for payment. I wish to thank everyone for their patience. And if you have any issues regarding your claim, you are free to call us, and we will work with you in terms of getting your payment to you in a speedily process. Good night and thank you.
Thank you very much, Labor Commissioner Ms. Chanel James. I'll turn now to the Honorable Prime Minister to address matters that were raised, and then the Prime Minister will go straight to his closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Val. One of the callers inquired about the rationalization, if you will, of persons in receipt of monies under the STEP program, the Poverty Alleviation Program, and the stimulus package. And the caller hinted that there was a bit of unfairness, that one could benefit from 3 social safety net programs being promoted by the government, and others may become disadvantaged. This is something that we are paying attention to, and we have begun the process of rationalizing, of re-examining the list of beneficiaries on the PAP program and the STEP program for the stimulus package, to see where there is any element of someone benefiting in circumstances where that person ought not to. And we will correct any matter that requires correcting. The idea is to ensure that the largest number of persons would benefit from these programs. And so rather than one person monopolizing 3 options coming from the same public sector deliverer, we will attempt to ensure that the person opt for one. You're on the STEP program, then if your income is on the $3,000 per month, which is what we established as the threshold for the PAP. You can benefit under the PAP once you meet the criteria. Certainly, if with the STEP and the other things that you are getting, income flows, you are over the 3,000, then you should not be on that program. The unit that deals with this matter, the statisticians, etc., are doing the necessary inquiries. They are liaising with other government departments, and in due time, we will have those lists appropriately downsized to reflect the fairness and that the most needy are the ones who are benefiting. The caller raised the issue of the support to the farmers, which have been quite extensive. Not only to farmers, but fishers have been able to acquire a range of inputs to allow them to ply their trade. And specifically, though, with respect to the farmers, the provision of seeds, seedlings free of cost, the harrowing of services that are being provided and paid for by the Department of Agriculture, land being made available. These are some of the typical support. With respect to those who are backyard farmers or gardeners, certainly items such as seeds and seedlings, they should be able to access these. The matter of the harrowing in the traditional way, we contemplate harrowing. I'm not sure that that would apply with respect to the backyard gardening. Tomorrow, when I meet at the function at Bayford's, I certainly will inquire of the functionaries of the Ministry of Agriculture. So hopefully on next Tuesday, one could provide some further clarity with respect to the subcategory, or rather, the category of farmers classified as backyard gardeners. Last week we had the question being put with respect to the VAT days, whether there will be VAT days in 2020. I did indicate that it was a matter that I would put before the Cabinet. Regrettably, we went late and long yesterday. We were detained with a number of important matters relating to the opening up of the country on the 31st of October, looking at some of the protocols, looking at the readiness of some of the hotels that are going to be participating in phase 1 and those who will be participating in phase 2. We had presentations by the Chief Medical Officer, by the head of the task force also, and as a consequence, we did not get to the agenda item of VAT days. What I can promise, certainly by next Tuesday, a decision would be made with respect to the VAT day, and that would be announced. I want in closing to thank all those who every Tuesday take the opportunity to listen to Leadership Matters and to participate in a variety of ways, whether through WhatsApping their questions or by calling in directly. I want to thank them for giving active support to the relevance of this program and to the benefits that it has brought to our people in having the opportunity to reach our leaders wherever they are in the public sector in a very direct way. Tonight, we had a conversation that focused on a number of matters of critical concern to people, particularly those who have been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic and being impacted in adverse ways. We have had good support and good information being shared with respect to the severance payments. We have had 1,855 claims on record to date, and about 620, I think it was, have been processed so far. The payments are being made as we speak and will continue. So once you have a claim in and you're qualified, you can rest assured that you will be paid. The government has already injected $11.1 million to that fund, which we inherited in red. To save the fund for the future, we have hired the necessary expertise to guide the government in what it will take to make the fund survive, sustainable for much into the future. The development of a strong severance fund is important in the context of the commitment we have made, the stronger and safer future for all the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. I want to pledge that, difficult as the circumstances are, it really has been an honor, a privilege, a challenge, and an opportunity to serve the country that I love so dearly, and the people in particular whom I love so very much, as the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis. We are a consultative government. We listen to the people, we hear the people, and we attempt to respond appropriately to the felt needs. Week after week I come to you, and we shall come to you, to hear from you and to give you an opportunity to both define the policy implementation and to have an input in policy formulation. Tonight was no exception. We have gotten guidance from you in terms of the manner in which you would like to see the severance claims being processed, and we will act upon them. You are able to share your views with respect to the performance of the Social Security and a range of matters. And those of you who are expected to benefit from the very significant development in the efforts to regularize our government auxiliary employees and our step workers, I hope that you found the presentation by Mr. Levi Bratcher very informative and very helpful. So until next week's Tuesday, God's will, I say have a pleasant week, and we will do all in our power to ensure a stronger and safer future. Thank you again for viewing.
Thank you very much, Honorable Prime Minister. And I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Ms. Sheridan Warner, our Chief Personnel Officer in the federal government. She's been listening intently behind the scenes here to provide support to the chairman of the committee that she's a member of, the STEP Regularization and Pensions Reform Committee. And I'd also like to thank all the producers and support staff that make this program such a success. We thank all of you for tuning in and for spending another Tuesday night with us. See you next time. Good night.
Before touching the mask, clean hands with an alcohol-based hand rub or soap and water. Take the mask and inspect